friends. I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the Marriage Initiative, and I am so happy today to introduce you to Dan and Danielle Macaulay. In addition to offering a complete married up date night package for couples, Dan's a gospel music award winner who has written and recorded many original worship songs. Danielle is also a writer and a speaker. Together, they've been a voice for marriage as frequent participants on a Better Us television show that's run for 7 seasons in their native Canada. Dan and Danielle, thank you so much for being here.
Well, our pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, this is a fun day, and I really enjoyed hearing about your journey and your cute little love story of how you met. It's really fun. I'm not going to steal the punchline by telling it to you, so I'm going to let you share.
How we met.
That was a while ago.
It was a while ago. So we actually met at Christian summer camp as teenagers. Well, you were a teenager. I was a little older. I robbed the cradle a little bit, just a little bit. So yeah, and okay. So I probably we should say I was a little bit older. I took a liking to Danielle, and I kind of let it be known, like thinking future tense. I told her I think that she would make a great wife someday. And I tell you what, she got on her tricycle and pedaled away so fast.
No, but I actually got up and just ran away. That was it. And I think I was 15 at the time. And before I jetted, I said, Dan, I'm just thinking about getting my license. Like, that's all I want to do right now.
Fair enough.
Not marriage. Yes.
And so anyways, that turned into, shortly after that, a couple days after that, I wrote her a letter to apologize for being so forward, and which actually became us becoming pen pals. Back before email, actual pen on paper. We lived about an hour away, which with neither of us really drive. Well, I drove, but we weren't seeing each other, in person a lot, but we were pen pals. So that's how it all began.
Yep.
Oh, I just think that is such a cute story. And you kind of liked each other and that, but do you want to tell your story of watching him sing on TV?
Oh, okay. So, we had kind of, we'd see each other here and there, and we weren't dating at the time at all. But funny enough, I dated one other guy, and the day that I was thinking of kind of like dumping this guy, I turned the TV on, and there's Dan Macaulay, who I hadn't seen in a long time, singing on national television. And I noticed something right away. He had a green tongue.
Yeah. So I was in my Bible college travel team, and we were singing a song that I wrote that we led off in chapel. And we actually did 2 songs on the television show. The show was 100 Huntley Street. And 2 songs. The first song went fine. Second song, well, what happened was they had a live studio audience at the time at the show, and my mom and my grandma came to see me. And I went to talk to my grandma, and before doing the second song, and like so many grandmas do, she had a green candy, or she had not green, but it was green, but she just had candy. Grandma always had candy in her purse.
Of course she did.
Green candy. I popped a candy, not thinking anything of it, sucking on it. I'm talking to them, and then it's like, it's time to go do another song, spit it out, go live television, sing this song, and my tongue is totally green. And it's really obvious. And then you can kind of see over the course of the song clips, you can see the cameraman trying to aim like down, and so into the top of my mouth rather than down into my mouth, kind of thing, trying to change it up. But apparently it did the trick.
Apparently I like guys with green tongues. I called him that night after and left a message on his answering machine and was like, Dan, congratulations, you're on TV, and what's with the green tongue? But that kind of started us moving towards the dating world, and the rest is history.
The moral of the story, I keep a bag of green candies in the glove compartment now for date night. So no,
I love it. And I really wanted you to tell that story because it kind of showcases you guys' rapport and your camaraderie and your humor, because that's one of the things that you guys do is you do the complete date night package. And that's what I really wanted our marriage champions to understand about you and get a real feeling of how you interact, because you guys do it. Let's talk about that. We'll go back to your podcast and your your website where you can watch that video, because I saw your green tongue. That clip is then, and that's what made me laugh. But let's talk about your complete package, because that's what I really wanted our marriage champions to understand about you. It makes you so unique.
Yeah. So long before we ever got into marriage ministry together, I was a worship leader and an artist, recording, releasing music. And I would get put on different tours, sometimes with a comedian or a marriage couple speaker like Bill and Pam Farrell or someone. And I'd be on a tour with them. And I had to figure out how to, I was starting, when I was just first starting off in that, just primarily worship, which is awesome. But it didn't fit this context of like a date night kind of thing, especially not with a comedian, because it would be like whiplash, like he's funny and then I'm really serious worship. And so I had to kind of figure out a way to do something that fit a date night context. And so kind of over actually years of doing that, developed that. And so it became like a love song montage going from the 2000s back to the 60s, getting the audience, singing, I love you just the way you are, or whatever, fun love song it is, and getting them laughing, holding hands, remembering some of those memories that maybe are tied in with some of those. And then developing actually another thing, a comedy song kind of thing that gets a lot of laughter. And so it kind of came out of that. And then, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, about 6 years ago, some friends of ours invited us to be a part of a marriage television show. And we can talk about that in a second, but that's what kind of like started us into this whole thing. And then when we started getting requests to come and do marriage events, we're like, you know what? Like I have this thing that God was developing in me, knowing this was coming. I didn't know this was coming, but he did. And that we had that. And, Danielle's great on stage and she's funny and she's an author, and with like, well, let's put it all together. And we have the whole, the whole thing. We do kind of a game in the middle of the thing too. And Danielle really shines at, she could be a game show host. I'm telling you what, we've had several couples saying, have you ever thought about being
this whole marriage thing doesn't pan out?
Yeah, that's right. And more than just Vanna, like more than just, yeah, she's got the look. She could do the Vanna thing, but you could be Pat Sajak as well. So I'm just saying.
Yeah. And the whole thing, from the music to the fun element and humor. And then we want to do our best to just throw in some really practical teaching in a very fun package, because we recognize that there's probably a lot of husbands that are being dragged out to this event. And we just want to surprise them with the night that they're like, wow, we enjoyed this. And we know that when couples do something fun together and have that dopamine hit, they are connected. And that's part of, the glue that holds them together, is having this fun, funny, adventurous experience while just kind of getting some real practical stuff that they can walk out with and implement in their marriage to make it better. And so we kind of wanted to, especially coming out of COVID, just give couples a night where they were like, well, that was awesome.
And so we make sure there's a lot of humor in it. A lot of years of traveling with a comedian kind of, I feel like it taught me a few things about, I guess, how to do that.
Funny. That's what it is.
and we make sure that there's a lot of laughter, and it's really fun to see, maybe even especially the guys who were maybe dragged there, but whatever. It's fun to look out actually and see kind of demeanor change over the course of the night. Like I might be looking out at this, at the start with some of the guys, but then, we get them holding hands, singing to each other, them, arms around, and then they're laughing. And then there's a disarming that happens in the laughter, and we're able to slip in, some truth bombs in there. And when we see, couples more like this, by the end of the night and smiling and stuff. And so there's a loosening up there that comes with the silly stuff and the love songs and all that I think kind of clears some of the defenses out of the way.
And they're much more in a posture to receive the ministry moments that we do pepper into the whole night.
Yeah.
Well, I know you had mentioned too that that's one of the things you start with, the love song montage. Everyone can find their favorite song, and then you transition to the songs you wrote for Danielle.
Yep.
Yeah. So
my favorite part of the night, self-indulgently.
there was actually, when I first started doing that, I used to call you up on stage, but then it creates this kind of, it purposely does, it creates this kind of moment where I like seem like this hero for a second. Oh, I wrote these love songs for Danielle and I'm singing them right to her. And there's like, I can, it's palpable to me. I can, because probably because I'm the one up there doing it. There's almost, almost creates like a tension. Like some of the guys are like, all right, buddy, you're making us look bad, or kind of like, like it's just like, oh, enough of this. Yeah, this is self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Right. But then I take that moment and twist it and say, honestly, like I can't lie. Like as I sing these songs right now, I can't help but just be reminded of how poorly I've lived up to these big declarations of love over 23 years. 25 since the beginning of some of those love songs, and it just kind of like takes the pressure off, and like, okay, let's be honest, there's not a perfect marriage in the room, including ours, and it's not about that, but we're so thankful that it's not been just the two of us in this thing, but there's a three-stranded cord, like that Ecclesiastes scripture says, that and the Lord intends to be at the center of our marriage, and he invites us to invite him to be at the center of our marriage. And as much as we've been singing songs about, I'll air quote them now, love songs, that we know, and I know why we do them, because they're fun and they're nostalgic for us, but like, let's take a second and focus in on the creator of good and perfect and true love, the creator of marriage, the creator of man and woman, who wants to be invited into our marriages and to empower each of us to love with that perfect, selfless, agape kind of love. It's possible. And so it really creates a moment where we can pivot out of some of the humor and fun to like something. And there's probably several nights where pivots like that happen, but that's a pretty poignant one. And it maybe a little bit of a side swipe. Like, I don't think people expect me to say that usually. Now they will. Now that we've given all our secrets away.
Well, the marriage champions will. They'll be waiting for it.
That's
but
fine.
They're probably delighted about
it. Just one other thing about that, in the where he has this self-deprecating moment, we definitely add those into the teaching aspect as well. It's like, we're learning along with you. And these are the things that we've gotten wrong and we've been able to correct. And this is what works for us and what doesn't. And so there's a lot of moments throughout the night where it's like Dan and Danielle don't have it all together all the time. And clearly we can create that even playing field.
I don't know if you saw the clip from one event we did in Charlotte where Danielle was quoting scripture. It was right after I talked about sex, and she was like, James 5:16, and she said, "Did you just see that one?"
I said that in church.
And it just kind of blew up the room for a second. It was like, oh my goodness, she just slipped and said sex. And
that's the entire thing they're going to remember from the whole night. Hopefully not, but yeah, one of those fun moments that we did not plan.
But really, like when we were invited to become a part of the marriage show, we were like, "Are you sure us?" Like, and we didn't then, and we don't now approach it like, okay, we're the, experts who know everything and, have a perfect marriage. But like Danielle was saying, we're in the trenches, and these are some of the things that we've learned that really work for us, and they will work for you because they're principles from God's word. And guess what he says works, he made this whole thing. So
when you say in the trenches, you've got two teenage boys, so you're right there
in the thick of it.
In the thick of it.
I remember mine are just a little bit older, and they do turn out to be delightful later. But that teenage,
thank you for that.
So we have something to look forward to. That's good.
Yes. Well, you mentioned fun and you mentioned sex, and you have a few other points. You want to give us a few more of your bullet points and kind of the content of your date night package, the married up date night package. And I wanted you to talk about the name too.
Yeah. We start off the whole night. We talk about we want couples remembering why they said yes to each other. We want them to leave with completely changing their thought process about their husband or their wife. And so
because so much hangs on the thought process, which is your first point.
And so my first point talks all about like what we feed grows. Our minds are kind of like our Instagram account or our Facebook feed or our Netflix account, where what we choose to click on, we get more of. And so we just talk about the importance of Philippians 4:8 and thinking about things that are good and lovely and right and admirable, and focusing on these things about our spouse, because when we do, they will eclipse all the irritating, things that we tend to make bigger than they actually are.
Yeah. And you tend to find what you're looking for. Whatever you're focused in, you'll find. I was just reading a story from the Gottmans about how couples that had negative thinking about their spouse, they actually missed 50% of the positive things their spouse were actually doing because they were thinking negatively. And then they interpreted things that weren't even negative as negative because of their thinking. So that's one of the first ones. The second one is that right feelings follow right actions. And, this world that really greatly emphasizes our feelings. How do we feel? And say, follow your feelings. Well, following your feelings is the worst thing you can possibly follow, because our feelings go up and down with the weather, whether we've had our coffee or not, whether we're hungry or hangry.
PMS, ladies.
All of those things affect our emotions and our feelings. But the good news is we don't have to follow our feelings. We can lead our feelings. And when we do the things that we know we should do, some of the things that we might do, like being kind and things that come natural when we're dating, we have to be really intentional about doing when we're married. And, those infatuation feelings of love, they only last a little while. And beyond that, we begin to build something that's deeper and based on a commitment for one another. And so we don't say, oh, I've lost that loving feeling, I'll go find someone else who gives me butterflies. No, we say, I'm committed to you. And our commitment, our covering covers us in the middle of that. In the middle of our feelings, which will fluctuate. Not that we're living in a loveless marriage, but we can reacquire those feelings by simply doing the right things. It will bring it back.
Yeah, for sure. The third point, I start out admitting I love a good I told you so. I love being right. I'm a little competitive, but what I can confirm
she's right about that.
What we've learned over 20 some odd years of marriage is that if there's a clear winner and a clear loser, you both lose. And not only that, everyone else around you who shares the same space with you, they lose too. And so we talk about fighting for unity instead of the win, and being on the same team. And that, you can actually even say you're sorry when you know that you were right. Like you can fight for unity.
I did it this week.
Oh.
Now she's like, wait a second, what do you think you were right about me actually?
I'm on Danielle's side.
He always thinks he's right.
No, that's not true at all. Point number 5.
Tell us about Married Up, because I don't want to steal all your thunder.
That was point number 5 that I was going to say. Point number 5 is simply that you married up. The idea that obviously sometimes the term married up is like, it's like, so I have a friend who invited me to become a part of a Facebook group called "How Did He Get Her?" Right? So the idea is like, oh, you're punching out of your weight class, buddy. Like she's way out of your league. And so, but in that context, if I married up, then did she marry down? Like she got the worst end of the deal. And so we like to say that you both married up, that you are different by design and you make each other better. I have strengths that cover Danielle's weaknesses, and she has strengths that cover my weaknesses. And we make each other better when every weakness or difference of opinion is an opportunity either for friction or for us to cover each other in those things and look after each other that way. And so that way we make each other better. And also the simple fact is that marriage ultimately is not just about being happy. Hopefully happiness is a byproduct of it, but really it's your spouse is a tool. I do finish that sentence. Your spouse is a tool in God's hand to make you more like Christ. And Danielle, God is using Danielle to make me more like Christ, and he's using me to make her more like Christ. And every time that we have an opportunity to be less selfish, to be more patient, to be more kind and gracious, and all those things is an opportunity where we have to become made more like Christ. And so because of that, if you'll submit to that, I mean, living with another person who sees you, knows you, who you really are, and to live in accountability to that and in submission to each other, as the Bible says in that, it forms you into being more Christ-like. And that ultimately is God's plan for all of our lives.
Mm-hmm. And then we kind of round the bend with the idea of fun. And so all the crazy stuff we do leading up to that finally makes sense. Like there's a method to our madness here. And we talk about even the scientific things, like I had mentioned earlier, about when we do something fun, new, adventurous, we get that dopamine hit that wants us to come back for more. And then when we do it with each other, it just glues us together. And so we have some great fun stories kind of surrounding that point that drive it home. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And then speaking of fun, the next point is sex. And I do spend a little bit of time talking about sex.
A little bit too much that for my comfort zone, really.
So funny thing, like last month or so, we did one of these in a place where my parents actually were. And so I actually was up there talking about sex in front of my parents, which, you know, they've been married 52 years. They know what they're doing, but you know, it's like it's just a little weird for me. So we do talk about sex a little bit. I don't know. We need to go into a ton of it right now.
Let's just say the overarching theme of our sex talk is that it's so much more about intimacy and giving.
Yeah.
And you know, what's that quote you say about do for your country?
Well, you know, the like the old American saying, like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So
we'll just sum it up like that.
Yes, you know,
that sounds like a good place.
The golden rule works in the bedroom too. So, and then lastly,
we just flip it even more.
Go from sex to prayer.
We end on the point of prayer. And, you know, I asked the question, like, if you knew that you had 99.9% chance of winning the lottery, would you buy the ticket? And most people don't want to admit in church, like, yeah, I would. And I say,
yeah, I would
you know
buy
what?
the ticket.
We're not endorsing gambling here, but that would actually be a wise investment. And that is actually the exact same odds that your marriage has of not only surviving, but thriving when you regularly pray together as a couple. So we dive into prayer a little bit and then end on just a really cool, powerful story about the provenance of a piece of art, the history of a piece of art that gets broken, and you would think that the value diminishes, but then they have a master restorer weave the broken pieces of the canvas back together, and it becomes even more valuable. And we just end on a note that we know there's brokenness in a crowd this size. We know that there's fractures, or maybe you're feeling like that piece of art that had an elbow completely rammed through it and unfixable. But we have a master restorer who weaves us back together if we're willing. And then that story, our provenance, makes us even more valuable as a couple.
It's a true story about it. Is it a Picasso piece of art?
Check it out. It's called Le Rêve, the painting by Picasso.
It's very cool.
And then you end the whole night. How do you end it?
With I do a song called "God Gave Me You," and while I do it, we show a video on screen that shows couples when they were younger and then when they're older. They're just collected that we found sometimes in their 20s and in their 80s.
Often recreating the pose from their younger years.
And you just you look at them and you think about how much life they've lived in between those pictures. And, you know, it hopefully casts some vision for, like, if we hold on, if we hold out, if we push through, if we're in a hard time, but we push through, you know, couples that go through the valleys together get to stand on the mountaintops together. And so just kind of casting some vision for, you know, what's possible and what's the value of sticking it out, you know, pushing through hard times, especially in the context of when we're including God, like God gave me you, like with his help. I mean, with the Father's help, the Father who raised Jesus from the dead, with that kind of power and that same spirit. I mean, there is no limit, and there is no brokenness and death even that can take your marriage out for good. So
yeah, usually not a dry eye by the end of that song.
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, and now as you share that in your date night package, you also have your podcast and you have your website and you share some of that. And you've learned a lot of this as you have been guests on the Better Us show in Canada, which
Yeah.
our Canadian friends can see. I guess it's probably available online too, right?
Yeah, I mean, anybody can go to their website, abetterus.tv, or on YouTube, just search up A Better Us. You can find all the past seasons. There's about 6 of them.
All the episodes are on YouTube, and they're all free to watch, so people can watch them. So yeah, we got invited to be a part of that show about 6 years ago when it first started. And the format of the show is we have great experts on the show, like Dr. Gary Chapman, Leslie Parrott, Dave and Ashley Willis, Jimmy Evans, like lots of really some of the best marriage teachers in the world. And then it moves to us and a few other couples sitting in a kitchen talking about what the expert was talking about. And it's really been the thing. We often say that being a part of the A Better Us marriage television show has been the very best thing for our marriage, because whereas I truthfully as a guy maybe early on might have been complacent or been like, oh, we're fine kind of thing, and as so many guys are, which is why they're the trickier ones to get to the marriage date nights. But as I've been in those things, I've just learned and grown so much. I think I'm a better husband, right?
Absolutely.
So there we go. Out of the horse's mouth.
It's
better.
It's been such a great experience to be a part of and to learn and to grow. And like we said, the setting is almost like, we're not the experts. We're almost, it's kind of like a small group setting. If you were at a church in a small group and you're watching a video, and then you all just kind of talk about whatever the topic is and how it applies to you as a couple and your family. And we're just all helping each other make it. Yeah.
And so that's what started this all. And then, like you just mentioned, we also have now a Married Up podcast, which we just started at time of recording. We just started season 4 of, and this season we're going through 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, and we typically have 13 episodes in a season, and it just so happens that there are 13 descriptors of what love is in 1 Corinthians 13. And so each episode we're talking about one of those things and really breaking it down. Love is patient, love is kind, all of those things. And so that's where we're at right now. And so that's just something people can get wherever they get a podcast and listen to while they're on their commute or doing whatever they're doing, just to further encourage people. We just want to see people succeed, see marriages succeed, and try and just help them with some of the things that have helped us.
And there's not just us. We have a couple seasons that are us interviewing other couples, other experts, and just people who have been doing it longer than we have and have succeeded. And so lots of great stuff there to check out.
And Dan, do you ever sing on your podcast too? I'm just thinking about where you find
what? I tend to be the guy that, like, you say one line and it reminds me of a song from the 80s or something, and I will sing it. So there are moments where I will sing here and there on it, but not always. Not officially. So there's obviously a lot of singing in the date night thing, but I don't sing too much on the podcast. I did actually
unless there's special requests. I mean,
well, we could cross that bridge. I don't know about like how copyright works. If I'm
that's probably true.
A lot of things on it, but I do sing some stuff from time to time. It comes out because it's just me.
You'll learn at our podcast. It's just another day in the life of the Macaulays. You'll find out how crazy we are.
Oh, well, and I know too, what's interesting about your website is it's kind of the launching pad because Dan, you have your worship songs and that, and then you also you can lead worship, like a worship retreat or that at a church. And then you've got your speaking together, your date night, and your podcast. And then Danielle, you have kind of your own speaking for women as well. And some of the content from your date night kind of bleeds into there, especially your humorous part about the kids. Share that with us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before I was ever an author, I was just a mom, and I was looking for ways to get the Bible into my boys on their level, something that would keep hold their attention, because these days and age with YouTube and all that, the attention span is gone. So I just decided to create some resources myself. So I now have 3 fun family mealtime devotionals. They're called Table Talk. And they are just quick, little snippets. They all start out with a funny thing that a kid has said or done. And we just turn that into Bible teaching. And then there's some, little maybe memory making things around the table, getting families talking, doing some games. And then I also am a foodie, so I have a bunch of family friendly recipes in the back too. And then even before that, I never aspired to be an author, but I felt like just like a commissioning from the Lord to write a book to share with the women of the church. It's called Why Can't We All Just Get Along? It's about women, female relationships, and often the things that kind of go unnoticed, untouched, especially in the church, that women are really good at hiding behind a nice Christian smile. Things like comparing ourselves to each other and competing, and jealousy and envy and insecurity, and all the things that keep us, the heart issues, from really truly being united together. So I have a book and a Bible study that, it's all just relationship centered for sure, our whole ministry.
Yeah. So like you were hinting at the websites. So at dananddanielle.org, if you go, someone went to dananddanielle.org, that would be kind of like the hub where you could go off from there into stuff I do and the stuff Danielle does, as well as some of the Married Up. There's also marriedup.net, which is really focused on our traveling date night ministry and the podcasts.
Sometimes we like to joke that we have a schizophrenic ministry, like lots of personalities. And often on a weekend, sometimes churches will have us do, a Friday night date night. He'll teach and train the worship team, and then lead worship will speak on Sunday, and kind of just keep us working the whole weekend.
Yes. Yeah, the worship stuff, that's how it all began for me, was leading worship and youth group when I was a kid, and then went to Bible college. Was a youth pastor for a bunch of years, and an artist, wrote and recorded a few albums and stuff. And before this marriage thing kind of came into it, that was a piece of it. And God, which one of us could ever look back and predict the way our journeys have gone, right? So God was weaving it all together and building, like I was inferring before, as I was on touring, doing other couples events, but only by myself and with the comedian, not with Danielle at all. Because Danielle was the mom stage of life. Actually, the first time we ever met Bill and Pam Farrell, I was on tour with them. They're the marriage men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti guys. I FaceTime Pam met Danielle. She was bathing Braden. It was a baby so that was just a different stage of life. But here we are, and we're doing a mix of all of these things, and we love it all.
And the marriage stuff, even though it was kind of out of the blue for us and we didn't see it coming, it has just been the most rewarding thing, especially for me. I came from a broken home. I was raised by a single mom, and I'm super passionate about just the health of the family, and it all starts between us. It all starts as a couple, and trickles down from there. So we are just so happy to be able to do that. And we love hearing how our nights and our ministry and our podcast are actually making a difference and impacting couples.
Yeah, it's so important in families' lives. And we had an opportunity a couple of years ago to tour a little bit with Les and Leslie Parrott. And, their stated goal of their whole ministry is to reduce divorces in the country by, I believe it's a third, which is, a massive number. But, we just kind of echo that same kind of sentiment. Like, what would that actually change in the social fabric of everything if marriages were a little healthier? What would it change in the church itself if marriages were a little healthier? I mean, there's no doubt there's an attack on marriage out there, and because it is the nucleus and the center of the home, and then that is the center of the church. And so, and yet it's so often just a neglected kind of thing, and couples are suffering kind of in silence and thinking they're the only ones who are struggling with these things. So much like the enemy loves to do, is to get us isolated. So it's when we come out and you hear maybe someone like us say, you know what, we've struggled too, and we've been in marriage counseling, and it's okay if you are, and you know what, here's some things that will help, and you know what, one date night won't fix everything either. So, beyond this, don't be ashamed or overwhelmed by the stigma of we needed some outside help to, go and get it if that's where you are. And too many couples wait too long before acknowledging that, there's some problems and getting some help for it. So.
Well, you guys have been such an inspiration, and I know our marriage champions have found a lot that they can they can take up the mantle and get on the charge with you. So, Dan, Danielle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Oh, it was great. And as always, marriage champions, if you'd like to find out more about Dan and Danielle Macaulay, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org.